I cannot help myself. I'm laughing too much lately.
That- that's what day drinking will do for you, you know.
Day drinking. By the way, do you know this? What is it called? Semolina porridge. Do you know what it is?
Oh, I hate that stuff.
You hate this? Can you
Yeah.
imagine? Sometimes you have a perverted taste,
Mm,
and lately I had a like urge to have that, and I made it. I put it like a teaspoon of nice whiskey, with
mhm.
herbs, and it gives you a very interesting taste. So, and I had that, and I feel like a child, like from childhood.
My mother used to threaten me with it. That was like the worst thing ever to have to.
Exactly. Me too. I hated that when I was a child, but
I
suddenly, like, boom.
I used to call it frog spawn,
Why? What does it mean?
like frog's eggs.
Oh, frog's eggs.
That's what I used to call it. And that it was like snot. It was horrible.
Oh my God. Wonderful, wonderful answers. Okay, anyway, let me have introduction. Normal.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to see all of you. And we have in our studio of Let's Talk show with Elena Berman. We have a guest who you know already, Simon Treselyan. Hello, Simon.
Hey, Ellen, how are you?
I'm good. I just came out from the swimming pool because yesterday I had that not your favorite porridge, semolina.
Symbolism.
I was puffy right away, and plus like pounds. So I went for swimming, and now I'm like again normal size. Can you imagine how fast in 12 hours you can just delete couple of pounds from your body? If
Wow, I'm not surprised. I mean, my body would reject that immediately, whatever I put in. Horrible stuff.
Yes, yes. You have to close your body and detoxify that thing. But we all good. I'm happy to see you because everybody was asking me your opinion. So I would love to ask you on a couple of things. First of all, doesn't matter that everybody already discussing about Kirk, Charles, and the assassination of Ukrainian woman. So, do you see any connection over here, or what does it mean? What kind of message do we have here?
Well, I don't think there's a connection between Irina and Charlie Kirk. I do think that there is a sickness in society whereby people could just think that the only option is to choose violence. Yeah, now, obviously, from a former special forces operator, I mean, we're used to violence, but not used to violence at home. We usually take that violence or deal with that violence overseas. So when it's at home, it's particularly troubling. I think that we've been through so many years now of apologetic behavior for criminals, with taking out the cash bail and just putting these criminals back onto the streets. And even Congress
Too much
people
forgiveness, right? Too
like
much
yeah,
forgiveness.
yeah, like Crockett, saying that just because they're committing crimes doesn't mean they're criminals. I mean, how stupid is that? So we're a victim of our own circumstances at the present time by not actually utilizing the laws on the books to put criminals away, so they're not a threat to society, so people don't get stabbed on the railway. And I think that, we need to have a society where single women can travel without the fear of being, stabbed or assaulted. And I don't think that's too much to ask for. And the thing is that these perpetrators do unfortunately fit a certain model, and no one wants to talk about it. These are career criminals. They've been in and out of the institutions for a long, long time. They have, drug problems. They have psychological issues, and no one wants to deal with that. We deserve to have a society where people that cannot fit into that society need to be isolated from that society. It's called the prison system and or the mental institutions. There used to be when people had problems that you just put them away and you gave them the treatment that they needed. And once they were proven that they could go back into society, then you'd let them back out again. But we seem to have forgotten that. Um, Now, in regards to the Charlie Kirk thing, there's a lot of th people talking a lot about the actual assassination.
I want to add about the previous what you just said.
Yeah.
Don't you think the reason why people become sick mentally, first of all, it is not their problem because they eat poisoned food, which is we're buying in the grocery stores, like regular stuff, and they've been medicated heavily by a doctor who they trusted, and plus stress from life. And of course, everybody has own psyche, and sometimes people are weak. They cannot handle difficulties. So
Mhm.
maybe this is the problem.
Well, I mean, I think for every psychological disorder, there are a number of different problems. You know, each individual is unique. Sometimes it can be their upbringing. Sometimes it can be toxicity in their body, as you mentioned. And I do feel that, the foods that we eat, the environment that we live in, does have a massive bearing on what we do. You know, I mean, any system that becomes corrupted by poisons is going to fail. And human beings are exactly the same. You know, we're made up of 70 to 80% water. So what happens when our water supply is poisoned or is toxic? You know, so you can understand how people do that. It's not necessarily the cause that is the issue right now. It's the result, and the result is that people are becoming more and more deranged. There is seems to be a higher percentage of mental illness, certainly in regards to the homeless, or the drugs that people use. And we do need to have some degree of solution for that. If we can't change the cause, if we can't change the world with its toxicity, then we need to change the result. So it's a challenge. It really is a challenge. I don't growing up as a boy, I don't remember the type of stuff that goes on in society now.
Yeah,
It
it's all
didn't.
artificial.
Yeah.
It's all made up. Okay, let's go to the Charlie Kirk because it's a lot of rumors going on right now, and it looks like somebody is trying to mask the truth and trying to take people's attention away. For example, a lot of videos is going on like it is not real assassination, it was AI, and he's in reality life. Other people saying it is a sacrificing, and third people saying it is probably because he didn't he started to obey above people, so that's why they showed him who he is. So what do
Well,
you think about this?
I mean, I totally reject the fact that it was an AI set up and that he's still alive. I mean, this was a deeply faithful family man. I mean, his wife now is one of the most high profile people on the planet, and both her and his children are going to be sort of overseen for a long, long time. So the fact that he would never be able to be with his wife again or his children, if this was some form of ruse, this doesn't make
Yeah,
any sense
exactly.
whatsoever. So I reject that. Now, we have seen in the Kennedy assassination that the Oswald, who supposedly did it, it does seem that that was a problem thing, and he was a patsy. Most political assassinations are exactly that. They induce people that actually believe that they are going to do the assassination, and they're the ones that are going to get set up to get caught. Whereas the real assassin is a professional, and they don't get caught. There is a lot of very compelling videos out there at the present time. Certainly, if you look at the videos with Jesse on fire, very compelling evidence to suggest that he was shot from a different angle. And I do agree with that. Having seen that type of thing for real. I don't think that this guy Tyler was the main guy. He probably thinks that he was doing it, and he was induced to be able to become the patsy. Now, when you look at the results, see, the fact of the matter is that Charlie Kirk is dead, and that's just a fact of life now. I think it's quite interesting that there's some other areas around this. We've certainly seen the evidence of the Snake Eyes film with Nicolas Cage, where a man called Charles Kirkland dies on exactly the same date in that film, which is back in the 90s, by a guy called Tyler. I mean, absolutely bizarre. And September the 10th is the date. So whether that's a coincidence or not, one can actually have a look at that.
But they can
Um,
actually take randomly situation or movie and they just use it. When people go looking back, they connected the dots.
it would be a very clever ruse. It would take a lot of organization to be able to do that. But political assassinations and patsies have always been part and parcel of it. Now, but what you got to look at is what did it achieve? If the goal was to close down Charlie Kirk and his message, it failed spectacularly, because as we've seen now, church attendance has gone up. There's hundreds of thousands of new chapters honoring Charlie Kirk all over the educational system. So if it was to try and stop his message, it didn't work, quite the reverse. And I think that the whole of, it's not just United States as well. We're seeing this in Europe. There's a whole new wave of movement of faith-based evangelical interest where people are even taking to the streets and becoming quite vocal in this. When you consider that the left wing of society have tried to demonize the church and the faith for as long as communism and socialism has been there. The Russians did it, the Chinese have done it. Every socialist or communist system likes to think it's its own religion, and religion is incompatible with that. And this is why communism doesn't work in Muslim states as well. I think it's interesting as well that even his name, Charlie Kirk, Kirk is actually an old Scottish word for church.
Mm.
And in German, Kirche means church. So was this an attack on the church? Now, one thing I do find interesting is that there is this massive now rise in Christian faith, but we haven't heard from one source about this. But there's one source that you would have thought would have actually enjoyed the wave of new Christian faith, and we've heard nothing from them, and that's the Vatican. Not a single person in the Vatican has said anything about this. Not the Pope, not any cardinal, just no one. And I find that astonishing.
Okay, could you tell me what you would think they're supposed to tell?
Well, for a start, I thought, I would think that the Catholics never lose an opportunity to further the cause of Roman Catholicism. They're always looking to increase their numbers, increase their popularity. And you would have thought that given that they're both Christians, both reading exactly the same Bible, that you would have thought that they would have jumped on the bandwagon and say, we pray for Charlie Kirk. The Catholic Church opens its doors to those seeking faith, da da da. I mean, that's what I would have done if I was a Catholic. But they haven't done, and I find that very, very interesting. I have no answer for it, but every time I've said that to people, people go, "Oh yeah, 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 that's actually true." So there's something going on there. I do feel that the person that was coming out of this with quite an amazing profile is Erica Kirk. I mean, she has handled herself so well during this time. Having her husband shot in front of her and her children. The fact that she has been able to hold herself to such a high standard, and certainly in regards to her Christian faith, even to the point of forgiving the assassin, which I found fairly extraordinary because most people wouldn't think that way. But that is exactly how Charlie Kirk would have probably have done it himself. So I do feel that she and her profile now, I mean, Turning Point USA is going to become a massive political and faith-based force. I mean, it was before. We feel that it may have turned the election last time. What it has done is that it's opened up the question of faith to a whole new generation. It used to be, and I was giving this a lot of thought the other day, most people, when you consider conservatives, right? When you think of the word conservative, you think of the type of people that go into that box. They're usually old people, right? They're people that look back to a better day when things were easier and gas was cheaper and all of these things. And and of course they're the ones that are dying, right? Because they're old. And as time goes on, there's going to be less and less conservatives when you look at it in that way.
I would disagree on that because conservatives, it can be how you've been raised and where. Usually, when
Yeah,
you're
it can be. And this is the next point I'm going to make
okay,
because the education system has been largely hijacked by the left wing, both in universities and high schools and all of these type of things. Teachers' unions, Department of Education, they've been pushing an agenda for a more secular society that does not rely on religion, that is a more sort of equal form and that is more social in its context. And therefore, you find that all of these institutions have bred a whole generation, as we're seeing now, people in their 30s to 40s, these mid-range sort of liberal minds that have gone through, the system, and they weren't in the recession. They've lived through, 9/11, and they hold more socialist views. We're seeing this, of course, in New York. But now with this new emergence, where the new youth, the people that are just coming in, perhaps voting for the first time, they're now flooding the churches because they're looking for something else. Society has let them down, and it hasn't given them the fulfillment that probably we had, in regards to wanting to achieve, wanting to have a career, wanting a family, buy a house, have a nice car, retire, healthy and well. A lot of those things that the youth of today don't see that happening for them. They're living more with their parents. They're they're using Uber as opposed to buying cars. They don't see that there's much of a future, and therefore the faith has left them. I think that what's happening now, what we've seen in the last 3 weeks, is that there's this resurgence. It's almost like a revelation. It's quite remarkable. I haven't seen anything like this in my life, where people are now flocking to something that has purpose, something that has meaning. And that surely has got to be what life is about. It's not just accruing stuff that you just have to pass on to someone else when you die. It's about fulfilling a deeply held purpose in life. And that's certainly how I've always wanted to live my life, is that I want to be able to kick out of here knowing that I did the right thing for the right reasons and that people would be sad to see me go because, my inclusion in the world has been positive. And I think a lot of people have not felt that way for a while.
do you think those people who planned this assassination, they were thinking about circumstances? Like it is going to be opposite reaction. Everybody will unite it and maybe it will grow something like where people will wake up finally. Or they didn't care what they were doing. They just needed to shut up him and that's it.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure that we're actually going to find out what that answer is. What we do know is the result, right? Because the result is in our face right now. So if they were, as I said before, if their role was to shut him up, it failed spectacularly. If it was to stop the words of faith and the words of the Christ into universities, that hasn't worked. And I got to remember, I mean, the only thing I can relate this to is the death of Princess Diana. I mean, I was at her funeral, and there was a lot of talk before that, because she was with Dodi Fayed, who was a Muslim, and there was all this nonsense that was going on, and of course a lot of conspiracies about whether she was murdered, whether the royal family were involved, all of that type of thing. But I was there in Hyde Park with 250,000 people. Okay, there wasn't space in Hyde Park's one of the biggest parks in the world. And when that flag came down on Buckingham Palace to half-mast that the people demanded, when that came down, every single person in that park stood up as one. 250,000 people stood up and cheered. And it showed to me that the power of people is far greater than the people that would purport to lead us. And when I was there, in the streets watching the funeral, it was 14 deep on each side in the street, people. 8 million people came into the capital for that funeral, and there wasn't a single crime. There was no crime on that day. It was like people had come together and cohesed themselves in such a manner that everything else was secondary. And I saw the faces of people in those cars, the diplomats, the heads of state, and they were shocked. You could see the shock on their faces that they were looking at these people and the power that the people held. I think we're going to start to see that as well, on our nation's streets.
The only explanation it is sacrificing them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the links and the analogies of the sacrifice of Jesus Christ are obvious, and it's interesting that Erica Kirk has taken on the role of Mary Magdalene in this. If Charlie Kirk was Jesus, then Erica Kirk is Mary Magdalene. And she has always been the most important part of that story. It was Mary Magdalene, not Jesus Christ, that set up the Christian churches. It was her that carried, the blood of Christ, the Holy Grail, with Joseph of Arimathea, and set up the first wattle church in Glastonbury in England. This is historical fact. She was at the cross. She was at that point of sacrifice. And she is the one that actually, turned on, the word, if you like. Now, I find it interesting as well. And I was having this conversation with someone the other day. I said, isn't it interesting when you go to a church that there are no statues of Jesus Christ? Every now and then you'll see one nailed up on the wall onto a cross, but there are no statues of Jesus Christ. I said, how many churches have a statue of the Virgin Mary? And of course, everyone does. So she is probably a more important figure than the sacrifice of Jesus, because she was the one that actually took, his teachings. Because you've got to remember, he was looked upon at that point as a terrorist. His words were going nowhere. It was only both with her and the disciples afterwards that we now have, Christianity. Things like St. Paul, Pauline Christianity, which is the basis of the Roman Catholic Church. So I think that the parallels between the sacrifice of Jesus, the sacrifice of, if you want to call it, of Charlie Kirk, and the rise of Erica Kirk, I think is going to be significant. And it would not surprise me at all if she was on the ticket for vice president in 2028, because of the power of that movement. She is going to cohese all of the youth. And the truth is that the Democratic Party do not have an answer to that. They've spent years and years demonizing the church, demonizing conservative values, demonizing even, the Constitution, and people that want to have, go back to like a normal life, if you like. And because they pushed so much onto, whether it's Black Lives Matter or the trans movement or the Pride movement, they've taken on and championed, some of these causes, some of which, of course, have merit. But the fact that they've done that with such strength and totally have forgotten what normal people want. And normal people just want to live a peaceful life. They don't want to protest things. They don't want to burn down buildings. They don't want to get shot by rubber bullets or tear gas. They just want to have a life,
Yeah.
enjoy a family, the white picket fence and the 2.4 children and the dog and the cat. And, a lot of people would just like that, you know. Right now, I would like that. I mean, I haven't done that in my life. I've chosen a far more active and dangerous path in my life. But right now, when I come to this part, which is I would consider that the autumn years of my life, if someone offered me, quiet house on the range with my, dogs and family and children, I would probably take that. I would.
You want you want if I will adopt you?
Well, that's a whole different psychosis, isn't it? But
I'm on the beach, you know.
no,
The
there is
ocean
that.
is
There
right
is that.
here. So I see. We hear your story. So basically, she will be a transportation. She will be carry-on because she will barrier of the message, and
Yeah.
she
I mean,
will.
that was obvious as soon as she got voted in as CEO of the organization. I mean, what I think is going to happen now, so again, stay with me on the parallels of the Jesus Christ thing, because if I'm right, then she will head that organization with a couple of mentors, but there will be another 12 Charlie Kirks. Now, they've already got two of them that I know that are out there, clean looking, clean cut, kids that can speak, that have charisma, that even look a little bit like Charlie. Imagine if there was 12, like the 12 disciples. Those are the kids that are going to spread the message of Charlie Kirk. And I think that's going to happen. I think it's already happening. I don't think it can be stopped.
You hear a story about the rings, what she has, a lot of misunderstanding and explanations of people.
I did see something about that. Who was trying to say that she was a Freemason. Of course, women can't be Freemasons. I mean, they could join the Order of the Eastern Star, which is a quasi Masonic organization. I mean, I've been a Freemason for 35 years, so yeah, so that's simply not a true thing either. I haven't seen those rings, not with her wearing them in public anyway.
So the letter G just represents God, probably, right?
Well, actually, in Masonic form, it represents God or geometry.
Oh,
Right,
Geo.
we've got to, yeah. So Masons obviously look on geometry as being the science and God as being the faith. So actually, you don't have to believe in God to become a Freemason. You got to remember that the Masonic order was based upon Christian knights, the Knights Templar, and they were monks. That's why for it to be a Freemason, you have to be a man and you have to be 21 years old. You can join at 18 if you are the son of a Mason. But that's a very, very specific um, ask. But you cannot join as a woman. You can go to Order of the Eastern Star lodges. Men can go to their lodges, but women cannot go and have never gone to a male lodge. This doesn't happen.
Yeah, I would love to ask you a couple of questions. So it will be several of them. So,
Okay.
for example, we know that you have a very good experience in military,
Mm.
and you've had such unique experience, but how those lessons connected to everyday life now for you?
Sure.
And can I ask how you personally made that transition?
Yep. Oh, that was the question, was it?
It was a question.
Right. Yeah. Well, of course, special forces, brings in a whole new realm of being in there. There's the military and then there's special forces. So with special forces, you know that you're going to be placed in situations where it's going to be high stress, where you're going to have limited support, and you're expected to undertake high stakes operations where they're really important that they get done. So they need people that can actually deal with that. And, part of that is being able to test projected special forces soldiers at the earliest opportunity. So they put you in very, very high stress situations. Now, of course, stress comes in many levels. There's physical stress. There's also mental and emotional stress. And they give it to you all at the same time because they cannot afford to have you folding under pressure. So you need to be extremely physically fit and strong to be able to undertake the challenges. But it's unrelenting, so they try to break you mentally. And then on the emotional side, you start to doubt yourself. You start to doubt reality.
You mean on
And
purpose? On purpose to
oh
make.
yeah, they induce it. But and they're very good at it. So you find yourself being challenged in so many different ways. The way that I was able to overcome those challenges is the concept of time, because you know that it cannot last forever. It just can't. You know that this is a serial, it's part of a course. And because you've done your research and you've spoken to people that have already done that course, you know how many days it's likely to be while you're under that stress, especially during the what they call the SEER school, which is the survival, escape, and evasion. And you're under extreme stress, with like no sleep for about 4 or 5 days. But you know it's going to be 4 or 5 days, and you can count the hours and you can count the sunsets, and you know that at some point it will stop. All you've got to do is to be able to, outrun the clock, if you like.
You know what? You're in a better situation than we are. For example, I am can relate very much to that, and how the way how I was resilient and how handling the stress. Because only one difference, I didn't know when it will be stopped.
And that is the key, because when you get out there into combat situations and operations, you have no idea how long it's going to end. Even when you're under interrogation in training, you know it's going to be 3 days. You just know that. And all you got to do is outlast them. But if you were captured by the Iraqis and put into a jail, that could last for years, absolutely years. So, but they've got to prepare you in some way. And what this has done for me, certainly, is it's allowed me a certain ability to be resilient in the face of everything. As you know, I mean, I've had extreme stress. I lost my house in the Malibu fires, lost everything that I owned, lost my dog, going through divorce at the time. Then I had some physical challenges in regards to a heart attack, and and I still keep going. And the reason that I'm able to do that is that I see a higher purpose in living and achieving my purpose than I do with just feeling sorry for myself. Because I know that feeling sorry for myself does not actually change anything.
Exactly.
Only action changes things. Only action.
You're
You know?
absolutely right. Something is bigger than you. Your pity cry, something is better than bigger than you.
Yeah. And that's what having a purpose is. And I think that is one of the reasons that society has fallen over, is that very few people actually have a higher purpose. And as we were going back to this whole Charlie Kirk thing, there is the promise within the Christian faith of living towards a higher purpose. And of course, one also has got to bear in mind what happens at the end. If this is all there is, if this life is all there is, and when you're dead, that's it, done forever, nothing, what's the purpose? Why would you even go on? You know, why not just end it and end the problems? But the fact is that inbuilt within us is this knowledge that there is something beyond, even if it's curiosity at the very least, it's curiosity, and and at best, it's true faith of being reunited with loved ones, or finding out the true purpose and the magic of the universe. All of those things make us curious, and I think that's what gives, certainly from my perspective, it gives me a reason to carry on day by day.
Okay, what about trust and teamwork? For example, I'm imagine that trust was the life or death, right? And
Yeah.
in it. And how did you know who you can trust or you can rely on? Do you see parallels between that kind of trust and what makes relationships, for example, love, friendship, even business, work or fail?
Well, that's a very interesting and very convoluted question, because obviously, when you're in a very small, tight-knit group, special forces troops, you have to be able to trust the person next to you. You may not like them, you may not like them as a person, but they're still your brother, you know? And at that point, you do trust them because you have what is called a shared experience. You know what that person has done to get to that place beside you. So that gives you an element of trust. You know that the person is capable, you know that they're skilled, you know that they're resilient, and you know that they won't give up the same way as you won't give up. So
Right
that gives you
there.
a,
Okay,
a,
I'm sorry for
a very,
interrupting you. Right
yeah.
there, I would love to give analogy that we are as a human beings. We did something to become a human on this earth, right? So that's why we qualified to go together. So basically, if I don't like somebody, it doesn't mean I don't have to work with them, like you and your unit,
Mhm.
right? So basically, all of us have no excuses hate each other or don't work. So even if you don't like for some reason person, you cannot judge, kill, or do all kind of things to each other. If people will understand that, I think it's a good connection. Okay, go ahead. I like what you.
Well, yeah, I mean, and one thing again, going back to the Charlie Kirk thing, I was watching one of his videos, and it was it was a point that you could not argue against. And he said, if everyone on the planet lived by the Ten Commandments, there wouldn't be a problem, would there? And the person that was arguing against his faith had no answer for that because it's incredibly true. If no one was killing everyone, if no one told lies, if everyone was, true to their neighbor, you know, the world would be a better place. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Now, what you normally find is that human beings do tend to gather together in the force of a shared problem. Okay,
Yeah,
so you may not like your neighbor. You may not like the color of their skin. You may not like them, because of their social standing. But I tell you what, if Hurricane Katrina comes through, you're all in it together, and you will help each other. It's as simple as that. So a shared negative experience like that, whether it be a disaster, whether it be an air crash or anything, you do find that people do come together in those circumstances. um, wouldn't it be interesting right now, for instance, we have this divided world. The world has been divided by us specifically, whether we call it East versus West, whether we call it capitalism versus communism, whether you call it Christianity versus Islam, right? The world is split into factions. That is no doubt whatsoever. And people in those different factions will kill, lie, deceive, they'll do everything against the person who they believe is the enemy and who they believe is evil, right? Now, what if an alien species came to Earth and attacked us? At that point, East and West means nothing, nor does capitalism or communism. It's going to be humans against aliens. So it would be an interesting concept, would it not? And especially with the emergence of Three Eye Atlas at the present time, and everyone's talking about that, it makes you wonder what's about to happen. Could this be the way that human beings actually come together, to have, with a joint problem, to be able to solve that? And what would happen once they did solve that and they realized that they could work together, in the face of extinction? I think that's an interesting question.
yeah. So we will see end of the year. Somebody predicted some
Yeah,
aliens showing up.
yeah, yeah. It's like Happy Christmas.
Yes, exactly.
The aliens are coming for
Bunch
the
of gifts.
celebratory season. Yeah, and they're gonna, where are our presents under the tree?
Yeah, another question about adaptability and change. For
Hmm.
example, what do you do when a plan completely falls apart? Is there a mindset that helps you or something else? And
Well,
how can we use that same mindset if you have when relationships or career don't go
mhm.
so expected?
Well, Charles Darwin, his famous quote is that superiority of species does not go to the strongest or the most intelligent, but the one that is most able to adapt to change. Now, and we see this, human beings have been able to populate all parts of the planet. You put a polar bear into Arizona or the Western desert, and it will die. You put a penguin into that, it's the same thing. Most animals are unable to adapt to massive change.
Great
The
point.
one, the ones that do become our friends. Horses are found in every part of the world, so are dogs, right? So they become our friends because we can rely on them and we take them no matter where. I mean, I've got a husky dog. They're quite used to the snow. You take them into the Arctic, but she's quite happy as well, taking her into the desert, you know. So human beings are incredibly adaptable. And the reason for that is that they seek new skills every time. Life is a problem ready to be solved, whether it's the creation of fire, whether it's the creation of shelter, whether it's defense against a predator. All of those things are problems that have been faced by humans throughout existence. And every time we found a solution.
Or maybe it is a force, you know?
It's well, it's something deeply embedded within us, right? I mean, what's the first thing that we first challenge that we have as a child? We can't stand. We're laying there, but we learn how to stand and we learn how to walk. No one teaches us that. It's instinctual. We see that there is a necessity for us to move because we're vulnerable when we stay in one place. So the baby knows that it needs to crawl initially. That's the way that it gets around. And then eventually it will stand on its hind legs and it will then start to walk
No,
and then it will start to run.
if you will be as a Mowgli in the forest, you will never be stand up as a human. You will be walking as an animal who will draze you.
Well, I do believe that the human physiology does make us stand upright. I mean, and we see this even with apes. If people believe that we actually came from apes, apes do walk upright as well. They
Mhm.
just don't do it as well as we do because their physiology is different. So human beings are incredibly good at adaptability. And if we only knew this in our relationships and the way that we do life, it would be so much easier, would it not? So instead of actually at the first port of call, and I know that one of your specialities is divorce, what if we were able to come to the party to see whether there would be a solution to staying together? If the purpose was staying together, could we find those ways of being able to do it? Or have we made divorce so easy that's just something to do. I remember being at school. There were like, I suppose, 900 kids in my school, and there was when I was at school as a young kid, there was one divorced family out of 900 kids, one, and I was the only I was the only adoptee for some while, and then a second adoptee came in. Right, that's out of 900 children. So it meant that all of the children in my school came from a standard, stable home with two parents that that worked or not and looked after a family, and those kids went to school. No one was doing drugs when I was at school. No one was doing stupid stuff. And I think that says a lot. I think if you looked at a schoolroom now and you went into class and said, how many of you kids have got both parents together at the same in the home, there'd be hardly any hands go up at all.
Yeah, that's
So
why they're unstable mentally and physically, that they're
yeah,
insecure. They
yeah.
look for something somewhere, they don't know what even.
I think there is a general laziness in tackling change. and tackling the hard questions. You know, we've made it so easy to swap things over. We live in a disposable world. I mean, I remember that when if your shoes wore out, you took them to a cobbler and he fixed the soles and he fixed the heels and he gave you your shoes back and you looked after those shoes. Now everything is discarded. You use it, it wears out, you throw it away. And that's what we see with our relationships as well,
Yeah.
you know. And I can't say that I'm a paragon of virtue. I've been married 3 times. I went in each time thinking it was going to last forever, and it didn't. You know, I've had hundreds and hundreds of relationships, and you go in thinking this is going to be okay. And then at the earliest opportunity, if there's a problem, you go, you know what, this is not for me. I'm out. I'm done. And we make it so easy to do that. You know, we live in a disposable society, and it's unfortunate because the problem is that children get mixed up in that, and
Yeah.
they become disposable as well. You know, and then all of a sudden you've got stepbrothers and stepsisters, and you know, and now you've got to try and fit in with a new family dynamic, and it's a problem, and that's why a lot of children get screwed up because they do not have stability.
Yeah. The children is the most important part of this. So what about now we can go to emotional intelligence.
Hmm.
Did you training or like a pushed you or shut down you emotionally? So what training gave you? Or it was the way that you can do stuff smarter, or they
Hmm.
stopping you, for example, if you are doing your challenges. And do you think men in civilian life sometimes misinterpret strength as hiding feelings? Because a lot of men right now acting weird, I would say.
Yeah. Well, your emotions are things that you have sometimes very little control over. So if you can demonstrate that you do have control over your feelings, that actually makes you a far more stable person, right? So you know, if you were quick to anger, that would not be good from a special forces point of view, because it means that you know you wouldn't better hold back. You would just do things that are outside of the plan. And I think anyone that is out of control of their emotions is a potential threat anyway. You know, whether it be anger, whether it be sadness, whether it be depression, whether it be addiction, all of these things are emotional responses to the way that life is. And control of that makes you, you know, a powerful person, much more so than strength and power in that way, because physical strength will wane at some point, but emotional strength never wanes. If you're an emotionally strong person, that actually gives you the edge on everything else. See, the thing is that all of us, and we knew this right from the very outset when I was doing martial arts, everyone has within them an extra 15% if they can dig it out. That means you can run 15% faster or further. You can actually do things 15% better. Now imagine that you had 15% more finances in your bank account. Imagine you had 15% more love in your heart to give. Those things would change your life dramatically. And we have that built into us. All we got to do is make a decision. And that is the key element. In special forces, you made decisions. And those decisions you stood by until there was other evidence to suggest that a new decision needed to be made. So we were trained to be able to steal our emotions, to be able to sometimes subdue our emotions. For instance, one of the emotions that we had to control was the natural aversion to blood. Okay, so when you smell blood or you see blood, there is a natural sickness that comes out. You know that something's wrong, you know, whether it's your blood or someone else's, you know. So we had to be able to put a limit on that, because the last thing you wanted to do if you're in combat is go, oh my God, I can't deal with this, you know. So you had to be able to limit those emotions, but you had to enhance the emotions of determination, of courage, of resilience. So being in control, so you had these levers of, you know, pushing it up, bringing it down, pushing it up, bringing it down, according to the circumstance. So that never leaves you. So when you get out of the service and now you're not in combat, and now you're doing the shopping, you're helping other people, you're doing your work, whatever, you still have the ability to bring that emotional fortitude, is what we used to call it, to the fore, you know, and that creates good leaders. You know, people like to be led by people that are emotionally stable and strong.
Yeah.
They don't want people that are strong to anger. They want, people that actually can do what they say and say what they do, and I think that is really, really important, and it comes into it with choosing a life partner as well. If you knew that the partner that you're going to be with and spend most time with of any other human being, that you knew what their emotions were, you knew what their triggers were, you knew their weaknesses, but you also knew their strengths. And if you could actually get that together in a relationship, then I feel that you spend a much better chance of staying together.
Yeah, it's a great solution. I first of all thank you for the wonderful answers. Yes, but not everybody capable of doing such a
And that's true. And we have to just recognize that is that this world is not fair, right? Some people are born pretty, some people are born tall, some people are born strong. We're not all superheroes. Those are the things that we see on films that we would like to aspire to, you know, but we're not that. And we have to take a real inventory as to who we are, and having that self-knowledge is true mastery, right? So if you know, so I'll give you an example, right? When I finished, I went into special forces. I was selected for a special forces unit at 16 years old, and after going through this training, yeah, because I was a karate prodigy and I had a lot of good skills in that way. But I remember a certain time after doing combat survival that with all the things I wasn't able to do before I passed that, and I came out and the sun came out over the clouds and shone upon me. And in that moment, I knew how fast I could cover. And I knew looking into the distance, I knew because of where the sun was, I knew that it was to the east. I knew how fast I could run a mile and where I would get to within that next couple of minutes. And I knew that I could actually throw a cricket ball or a grenade, and I knew exactly how far I could throw that. These were skills I would not have been able to do only several weeks before. And it gave me a true knowledge of my capabilities. And I wasn't the best of them. I came in third. Right? I was always frigging third. Um, but I was never ever the best, but I was also never the worst either. And so I knew my capabilities, and that gave me an element of self-mastery.
Wonderful, wonderful. So back then you had a mission. What does mission means now for you in modern life? And has your service changed and how you use it and see it in life, family, or your purpose?
Well, as you know, when I got out of the military, it's sometimes very difficult just to cut all ties. I went on the spiritual sojourn for like 8 years, finding my true spirituality. I then started rescuing kids from sex slavery. Because I wasn't military anymore, but I still needed a purpose. I needed to be the good guy. I needed to do something that mattered, and I'm still that way. Now I do it with my writing. I've written 27 books now, and I write that not for my own entertainment. I write that in order to be able to help educate or inspire people to live a better life. And that's when all my speaking engagements did that as well. So my purpose changed, but the veracity, the strength of that purpose did not change. So now it's a true mission. And I never ever wanted to ever fail a mission. In fact, I very rarely failed a mission. And that wasn't just through skill, that was sometimes with a lot of luck as well. But you make your own luck. So my mission and my purpose now is to create as much irreversible, positive social change as I can within my lifetime, using all elements available to me. That means the spoken word, the visual, and the written word. And if I can do that, then I'll be quite happy to kick out of this life, as we all do, right? No one gets out of here alive. But I think I want to go out without regret. And I think when you live towards a purpose, when you have faith in yourself or something else, and it doesn't matter what it is, it really doesn't matter what you call, the God force. It doesn't matter whether you call it Allah or Jesus Christ or whoever. It really doesn't matter. But the fact that you hold that belief, the fact that you hold that faith, that you hold that power of purpose, that is what is important. And I think that the answers will come inevitably when you get to where you're going to get to next, and some people are probably going to be a little bit disappointed, but that's just the way of things. But I think that throughout our life now, if we all held a purpose and a true understanding of who we are in this world and the ability to help others along their path, I think that we're as close to what God intended as we can be.
Wonderful, wonderful answers. And definitely you will stay longer. You don't have to go so far because we want you here and you have a great legacy already, but we want if you will build up more. And
Well, I'm going to be a granddad on the 1st of February next year.
oh, wonderful.
My,
It's
my, my daughter is going to be giving birth to a little boy. So I do have something to look forward to in the next generation. And, just to see that your legacy is not just in the written word, that it's in flesh and blood as well. And that's been how life works.
so, and can you give a practical advice, for example, if you could teach civilians some skills for relationships, not physical, but emotional, what it would be? And what is the biggest tactical mistakes you think that people making in their personal lives?
Well, my parents were wonderful people, and they had a pact that they made on their wedding day that they would never go to bed on an argument, that they would resolve it before they went to sleep, so that no one woke up in the morning still pissed off. And they held to that. They had 47 years of marriage
Oh,
before they died, and I think that that would be something that couples should do, is that they should be prepared to argue their point, but they should be prepared also to accept the point of the other person. And, and to be able to place yourself into the position of someone else that has either been wronged or is misunderstood or whatever is a very superior skill in life. And that's what I would suggest for couples, is that they got together for love, so therefore, why wouldn't they deal with all of the problems in life with love as well, as opposed to with hate or with misunderstandings or with, you know, whatever. You got into this because of love, stay with the love. And when you understand that, it's almost like if love is the answer, it doesn't matter what the question is. Yeah. So that's what I would suggest. I mean, have I been an example of that all the time? No, I don't think anyone has. Would I like to be? Absolutely. But I do think that communication is a key element. People that communicate better have better lives. The one thing that we do have over the animals, animals, communicate from an instinctual point of view, through like body language or through different sounds and tones. Human beings have a very detailed way of being able to understand. And even in this interview, you couldn't find the English word for sacrifice, but you knew the word, you knew what it meant, right? You just had it in your own language. But you were very able very quickly to find out what that was, right? You put the effort in to find out a word that you weren't sure of in another language. And then you felt good about yourself in doing that, right? That is called détente. That is called, making an effort, even though you may not speak the same language, to communicate effectively.
yeah, because
And
I saved
that's what we
situation.
should be doing. Yeah,
I saved situation because you waiting for me. We have a project. We have to make it happen. So that's why I
yeah.
feel better.
And you see, the thing is that we then had two people that had a shared purpose. Mine was to understand you, and yours was to be understood,
Yeah.
right? That's our purpose. And together we worked it out. Now imagine that I don't think there's a single problem in humankind that has not been dealt with by someone at some point. So we have the skills, we have the experience. We just need to tap into that, whether it's, changing governments, whether it's divorce, whether it's stopping a war, you know, we've always found a way. And I think that providing as human beings, we continue to seek ways to have a better life, and especially a better life for our children, then we will seek those solutions to the problems that naturally arise.
Wonderful, wonderful statements you said, and I like all your answers. It is a very valuable. I'm glad that we can save this interview, and maybe your grandson will see one day
Oh, I
what
hope so.
what grandpa was telling him. And this will be like legacy for him and knowledge for him, valuable, by the way. So thank you very much for sharing your wisdom. And
My pleasure, Elena.
okay, guys, if you have any questions or comments, please do that because it helps for us to understand which topic we would love to bring next time. And secondary, we will love to share with more people. But if you don't do comments, people think it's not interesting. But everybody who see my videos was my guests. Everybody's saying the same. Elena, it's so interesting. Why it doesn't promote it so well, so brightly? I said, did you sign? Did you share with at least 10 people? No, but I will do. I hope you all will do, guys.
Excellent. Let's do it. Let's get this message out far and wide.
Okay. Have a wonderful day or the morning or evening. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye now.